Is an expensive glove worth it for slow pitch softball? In today's video, I'll take you through the different high price point, top shelf baseball and softball gloves that you would use in slow pitch. And we can talk about the options and materials and whether or not this is actually going to be worth it to you if you've never bought a high priced glove before. So when we're talking about high price point gloves, we'll talk about the 5 sort of major models. The Rawlings Pro Preferred and the Wilson A2K. These are their highest end gloves. The Rev 1X from Rawlings, which is their most expensive glove, but a little bit quirky. The Rawlings Heart of the Hide and the Wilson A2000, which are sort of equivalent high end, but the second to highest price point. And I'm including a Nike Vapor Elite. This is a new glove. Nike's back in the scene and they're in the high price point. They also have some kids gloves as well. But these are really interesting, so I wanted to make these part of this video as well. So we've got the A2000s, Heart of the Hides, A2Ks and Pro Preferreds, the Rev 1X, and the Nike Vapor Elite as the main expensive gloves that we'll kind of talk through in this video. So real quick before we jump into the different models and the differences between each one, let's talk about what you actually get when you pay for any expensive glove, because basically you do get what you pay for, and I've said that in other glove videos that I made as well. So this is a cowhide glove. This is a $40-ish Miken Pro Series, excellent slow pitch glove. This is a Rawlings R9. This is also cowhide. This is also in the $150 price point. This is what you get in that mid $100 range. You get cowhide. Cowhide is softer. It's from female cows. It is a less moldable leather. It's still thick. It's still high quality and durable, but it's not going to be stiff out of the glove or stiff out of the wrapper where you can really mold it and break it in exactly the way you want it. It's just softer, so it's going to kind of take the shape that it wants, and it's going to get very, very floppy over time. So if you're a soft glove person, if you really like a soft, big pocket, really squishy, then a cowhide glove that's, a lower price point is going to be right for you in most instances. For people that want a more expensive glove, they're paying for stiffness of leather. And so you're getting steer hide, so these are male cows, or you're getting kip leather, which is also steer hide, but it's a slightly younger male cow when they slaughter it. So Rawlings Pro Preferred, this is a $430 glove. This is kip leather, and it's just very tight grained. It's very stiff, which makes it very moldable. The inside is super luxe compared to the lower price point gloves. So it's kind of like, with a luxury car, the seats are nicer, they're heated, the steering wheel is wrapped in leather. It's the same thing with a higher end glove. When you put your hand inside a Pro Preferred or an A2K, you're like, ooh, it feels really, really nice. So that's one of the big things. It's the little stuff. Does that change how the glove performs? No, but that's some of the luxury that you get with the really higher quality leather and the sort of creature comforts, the luxury inside the glove. And of course, the shapes and models are slightly different and the craftsmanship is really high. But in general, you're just getting different leather. Steer hide, very thick, very stiff, and very durable and moldable when you spend more on a higher end glove. All right, so that said, let's talk about the different models. So the lowest price tier in the high level gloves are the Wilson A2000s and Rawlings Heart of the Hides. I only have one Rawlings model, but I have 3 different Wilson A2000s. This is a fast pitch model. And so these are very comparable gloves. They're about $329 brand new. You can always find them on sale. So I highly recommend you shop for a good deal because that's an amazing deal when you can pick up a Heart of the Hide or A2000 for way cheaper. But these are very stiff, very stiff. They will take a solid year to be really, really pliable and soft. So if you're a soft glove person, I really don't recommend an A2000 or a Heart of the Hide because it's going to take a long time to break in. That said, Rawlings has a Heart of the Hide R2G series. So this one is only a half a season old and it's very floppy because they soften it in the factory when you get it. So it's still high quality steer hide. It's still super luxe, but this one's already been softened so the break-in is faster. But in general, most Heart of the Hides and A2000s are not like that. Now, one thing to note about this is the SP14 model. This is a slow pitch specific model. It's a really good glove. It's also a stiff break-in, but because the glove's bigger, it's a little bit easier to break it in, so it's not like a bear. This is the SB13 model. This is also very, very stiff out of the wrapper, but after a couple days of catch and a good break-in, it's pretty much ready to go. I could go play with this. It's a little stiffer than you'd probably want right away though. Rawlings only has one Heart of the Hide model for slow pitch, and it's very pedestrian looking. It looks very basic. It's not super attractive in my opinion. It's clear that because Rawlings owns Miken and Easton, which are, they do a lot of slow pitch specific gloves, it doesn't seem like Rawlings actually just cares to make a high-end glove because they don't make a single Pro Preferred specifically for slow pitch. But Wilson has a bunch of different models or colorways of this glove, the SP14 and the SP13, which are slow pitch specific high-end gloves. So as far as should you get an A2000 or a Heart of the Hide, is one better than the other? It's honestly just personal preference. They both have really soft interior linings, not as soft as the next tier up, but they feel really good on your hand. They are super durable gloves. They have very thick laces. They are really, really well made. They're very consistent. So if you bought one in the past, you're going to get, the same quality when you buy one in the future. Rawlings and Wilson have been around forever. And it's not like, big box where the quality gets cheaper. In my opinion, they're still as high quality as any glove on the market. So you really can trust that you get what you pay for. If you choose an A2000 or a Heart of the Hide, it's really just personal preference. But like I said, actual slow pitch models, really Wilson is the way to go. There's a lot of options in both in baseball outfitters mitts. All right, the next highest tier of slow pitch gloves, we're talking about Wilson A2Ks and Rawlings Pro Preferreds. So these are both amazing gloves, and they're both very similar. They're like in the $430 or $450 price point. Again, you can also often find them on sale, but this one is a 12 3/4 baseball model. This is a 12-inch baseball model. This is one of my baseball gloves. They don't make any slow pitch gloves in A2K or Pro Preferred. So if you're going to buy one of these, it's going to be an outfield model like this one. This one is amazing. This is an H-Web. This is the Rawlings 303 model. This is going to be one of my gamers for this season, and this glove is incredible. Wilson also makes outfield models. This is not one of them, but 12 3/4, like the old Juan Soto model, the old Ronald Acuna Jr. models. Those were 12 3/4 inches. So if you want a Pro Preferred or A2K, you've got to get a baseball outfitters model. There are no slow pitch specific models that they make. Now, is it worth it to spend the extra $100 over an A2000 or a Heart of the Hide? It's really just little details. So the A2K is made in Japan, and there's a level of craftsmanship that goes along with that. The Pro Preferred has some, little details like this hand stitching here, this hand stitching here. The inside of both of these gloves is incredible. It's just super soft. It's got higher quality lining. The Cabretta leather, the sheepskin lining is higher quality in both of these gloves than the Heart of the Hide or A2000. But really just comes down to these look a little sleeker. They just look more high end than an A2000 does. But an interesting anecdote is that when major leaguers in baseball have their glove days, if they're a Wilson guy, it's basically 50-50 split. Major leaguers pick A2000s or A2Ks about half the time. It's not like every major leaguer picks an A2K or a Pro Preferred because they're higher end gloves. It's really just a personal preference. So your favorite big leaguer who makes $15 million a year playing third base, they might be using a Heart of the Hide or an A2000, even though they're slightly cheaper gloves. So really durability and performance is not the issue. It's really just the extra creature comforts. Like, do you want kip leather, which is the slightly younger steer when they slaughter it? So the leather is slightly thinner, a little bit lighter, and really tight grain and more perfect, blemish free. Or do you want the craftsmanship that comes from this being made in Japan? Really, it's just the tiny details that make the difference between the A2000 or Heart of the Hide versus the A2K and the Pro Preferred. But again, there are no models for slow pitch specifically, so you've got to go with the baseball outfield model if you want an A2K or a Pro Preferred. All right, now let's talk about the design-focused gloves. This is the Nike Vapor Elite. These are new for 2025 and 26. Nike was out of the glove game for a long time. This is the Rawlings Rev 1X. So the Vapor Elite is $330. The Rev 1Xs are $450. Again, you can sometimes find them on sale. These are brand new though, so they're not really on sale yet. Both gloves feel really good on the inside. Both gloves have this rubber on the back. Basically, the Vapor Elite seems to be a kind of a knockoff of the Rev 1X. This one came out a couple years ago, and it's a very, it's all rubber on the back. It lacks the seams or the laces down here on the bottom. There's no laces on the top here. The Nike Vapor Elite does the same thing. Both gloves feel really nice on the inside. They have super soft linings on the thumb and the pinky stall. The Rev 1X is a little bit nicer in the pinky stall than the Vapor Elite. And of course, the Rev 1X is a Rawlings glove, so all the little details are perfect. The laces are exceptional. There's nothing weird or wrong about this glove. With the Vapor Elite, they cheap down the laces. The laces are painted, so they're dyed a dark royal blue, but they're painted with a Columbia blue. Why they made that decision, I don't know, because the rest of the glove is really high quality and it's really nice and it's very design forward, which is typically why you'd buy a Nike. The only reason you'd buy a Nike glove over an A2000 or Heart of the Hide is because you want to look cool and do the Nike thing with this cool swoosh, on the thumb. I do think this is a really attractive glove. I think they both are really interesting gloves. So these are ones that you buy if you're just more hey, I love design. I want the quirky thing. I want a cool, different take on the glove, that's why you choose the Vapor Elite or the Rev 1X. It's not a performance difference. They're not really like significantly lighter or feel very different to me. The insides are really nice. You still get what you pay for. They're high quality gloves. They'll last a long time. The rubber on the back on both is equally thick, feels very, very durable. So it's really just a matter of like, does this fit your personality better than an A2000 or a Heart of the Hide or a Pro Preferred or an A2K? Now, one other glove that I do want to mention that I don't have here is Nokona. Nokona, they're all made in America, and they're very, very different than other gloves. They're made inside out compared to a regular glove. A regular glove is made where they stitch it and then they flip the glove inside out. And the Nokonas are basically made the opposite way, where all the stitching is on the outside. They are really beautiful, well-made gloves, and they're very expensive. They're like $400 and up for the higher end models, and they go well up into the thousands for custom models with different types of leather, all sorts of stuff. I don't own one, so I don't want to demonstrate here, but if you want like a really luxe high-end and made in America glove, Nokonas are worth mentioning. They're really like the cream of the crop. There's not a performance difference in my opinion. Like once you get to the high-end, A2000 or Heart of the Hide and above, there's no performance difference. Again, my anecdote about big leaguers choosing Heart of the Hides over Pro Preferreds pretty much proves that. But if you want the really cool design, the really interesting features, the different leathers, all that stuff, like Nokona's doing some really interesting things. So they're worth mentioning in this conversation because they are also the most expensive of the stock gloves that you can find here in America. All right, so two things left. My hot take on Wilson versus Rawlings. What is my preference? I prefer A2000s over Heart of the Hides at that level. I think the A2000 models are a little bit more interesting to me at that level. I think the shapes are a little bit more conducive to what I like in a glove, especially with a 2-hinge break-in. So when it comes to A2000 versus Heart of the Hide, for me, A2000 is the winner. However, for the higher end gloves, the A2Ks versus the Pro Preferreds, the Pro Preferred is my winner. I've had teammates I never owned a Pro Preferred until now, and I had a lot of teammates over the years who had Pro Preferreds, and they're always just gloves that I salivated over. Really stiff leather. I like the shapes a lot better of the Pro Preferreds versus the A2Ks. They just really hold up well over time. They're beautifully made. They have some of these interesting little details. So for me, the absolute like pie in the sky glove for me is the Pro Preferred. And my overall favorite glove of the high end ones that I have is either the Rev 1X or the Rawlings Pro Preferred. I really like this Rev 1X. I think it's a really cool glove. I'm really interested in using it all summer, so I'll report back when I get there. I also really like the Nike Vapor Elites because I'm a very design-heavy person. So anytime Nike enters the scene, they're always doing it a little bit different, and I appreciate that about them. I mean, Rawlings really led the way on this with the Rev 1X, and I think in a lot of ways, the Nike is a kind of a copycat of that, but I still really like the design. I like what they put out. There's a lot of different colorways of the Vapor Elites, which are all, in my opinion, really interesting. But I really enjoy the Rev 1X. This is my favorite new, off the beaten path glove. But if I had to pick one, I would go with the Pro Preferred. All right, that's it when it comes to gloves, high-end gloves for Slowpitch. So if you have any questions, leave me a comment below. I think it's a little annoying that the Slowpitch world doesn't focus on more Slowpitch specific models like Rawlings and Wilson. They're not pumping out many in that space, especially not Rawlings. But 12 3/4 is still a really good size for playing the outfield or infield in Slowpitch. So there's a ton of models. So if you want something that's really interesting, really well designed, lots of different colors, especially now more than ever, there's lots of really interesting stuff in the baseball outfield models. So definitely check those out if you're interested. And I'll link to these gloves in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you here in the next one.